Hello, these are flipped notes 7-3, and we are in the motivations unit. And in this section, work and achievement motivation. My Bitmoji is hard at work, so let's talk about work and psych. So attitudes toward work vary. People just have different kind of ways they look at work as a job. It's necessary way that we have to make money. Is it more of a career, an opportunity to advance from one position to another, or is it a calling, a fulfilling, socially useful activity? And generally, how you view it affects your motivation to do it. Flows and rewards. The concept of flow in regard to work is actually fairly new to the AP curriculum, and I think this might be actually the first time I really taught it. But the feeling of flow is experienced between when there's no work and when there's a lot of work, and you're immersed into your work. So flow, when you're having no work, you might be feeling apathetic, like kind of lazy or underwhelmed. When you have too much work, you feel anxious and overwhelmed. But with flow, you're just in the right spot. And you're less driven by extrinsic rewards and more by intrinsic rewards. So you're just kind of in that sweet spot of where you want to be in regards to work. The entire branch of psychology that studies the workplace is called industrial organizational psych, or sometimes they just call it IO psychology. And they're taking psychological principles and applying it to the workplace. They might work in personnel, or sometimes we call it human resources, where they're trying to decide who are the best employees for a company. Or it might be more of sort of a research side, which is organizational psychology, and they're looking at how different work environments and management styles can influence the workers and make them more satisfied with their jobs and more productive. Achievement motivation is more of our focus in this section. And achievement motivation is basically how satisfied you are with striving and attaining a level of excellence, with trying to achieve excellence. So, achievement motivation looks like a few things. It can look like your need to excel, your need for achievement, to complete a task successfully, to master difficult challenges, and sometimes to outperform others. Some of you might be in that race for like the top 10 or to be in the top 10%. The marshmallow test was Michel's way of, and I think his first name was Walter, of studying delayed gratification in relation to achievement. So we'll watch a video of this in class, but basically they asked children to wait 15 minutes before they could eat a marshmallow, and whether or not they could do that was a good predictor for future achievement. So we'll look at that more detailed in class. I chose just clicking a little bit slower today. Some people, rather than focusing more on achievement motivation, stress affiliation motivation. So, people with a strong affiliation motivation have a strong need for social bonds. They want to devote more time to interpersonal activities, spending time with others. They might worry more about acceptance. And in just a minute, we'll look at the TAT, or the thematic apperception test, which is a way that we can assess your achievement and affiliation motives. A couple different theories. John Atkinson, in his situational determinants of achievement behavior, looked at the different factors that determine our achievement level. So there's your general motivation to achieve success, your probability of success. So if I'm working for it, how likely am I actually to achieve success? What is the incentive value of success? If I study for my calculus quiz, do I have a good chance of actually, succeeding and getting a good grade? What is the point of me taking the quiz? Is that going to affect my overall grade? And for some people, the big situational determinant is more a fear of failure, that they know how they'll feel if they don't succeed on something. David McClellan has what we call the three needs theory of motivation, and he identifies the need for achievement, the need for power, and the need for affiliation, and says that people are dominated by one of those three. Those who have a need for achievement, those are the ones who want to solve problems efficiently and master complex tasks. Those who have the need for power want to control and influence others, and they tend to want to be in charge, leadership positions. And that need for affiliation is just that desire to be part of a group, to establish warm and personal relations with others. And when it comes to the working world, there's a place for everybody. But generally, for positive economic development to happen, you want to have a society that does put a high value on that need for achievement. When it comes to a business organization, those need for achievement workers are really kind of the backbone of your productivity. I would say, like at a school, those are your like hardworking teachers. But you also need the need for power workers, like your administrators, those who can excel at management. And then we also have those team players, those who just work well in groups and kind of keep the team going. Those who have high achievement motivation tend to choose challenging tasks. So when it comes to like what kind of work do you actually do, you want a task that you can complete successfully. So you want it to be challenging, but you don't want it to be so difficult that it's impossible. And you just don't want it to be too easy either. So you set realistically challenging goals. Those who have low achievement motivation tend to pick either very easy tasks, which most people could complete, or extremely difficult tasks where nobody could complete it. So it's like, well, no one could do that. But they tend to avoid those moderately difficult tasks that some people are going to be able to complete, but not them. The Yerkes-Dodson law, we actually talked about this in our last section, but we elaborate a little bit more here. It's sometimes called the inverted U hypothesis. So we talked about that moderate arousal is best when you are trying to perform a task, but it actually goes into more detail about it depends on what kind of task it is. If the task is complex, like it requires fine motor skill, let's say performing a surgery, or we could say the kicker at a football game, or if you were trying to maybe play the piano, those all require fine motor skill. The optimal level of arousal for those things is low, that you want to be calm and you don't want to be too hyped up because it'll make you nervous, maybe shaky. But if the task is simple and requires gross motor skill, so that's like using your whole body at once, we think of that as like the lineman on the football team, then the optimal level of arousal is high. And if it's a moderate task, like taking a test, then you want it to be a moderate level of arousal. The TAT is a test, the thematic apperception test. And in this test, the people are shown pictures. And it's just kind of like an ambiguous picture, meaning you could kind of it's not really clear exactly what's happening in the picture. So they ask the tester to tell a story about what's happening in the picture. And what your story is supposed to reflect your need for achievement, whether it's high or low, or if you have more of a need for affiliation. Some examples here. I've got this picture where this little girl's looking away, but she's sad. This person here also seems maybe they're exhausted or distraught and not really sure what's going on in this one on the right. But we'll look at some examples of stories that people might have wrote for high need for achievement or need for affiliation. That's the thematic apperception test. Where do we learn this achievement level? Generally, we learn our desires for achievement in our childhood and usually from our parents. High achievement motivation seems to come from parents who really are encouraging their child to try difficult tasks and try new things, that they praise them, rewards for success, they encourage them to keep going, to succeed rather than just complaining about failure and to move on. Once you're done with one thing, try the next difficult task. More general cultural influences, so things that we read, things that we watch on TV, how they're encouraged at school, and our environment, our society is definitely one that values achievement. So definitely a place where we learn it. With motivation comes conflict. When you have motives, but then they are competing motives. So we have 4 different types of motivational conflict. In the first one, we call approach. In this one, you're having to choose between 2 equally attractive options. So, as the importance of the choice increases, so does the difficulty in making it. So, do you want to go on a date night or do you want to hang with friends? Both good options. And those are both pretty simple, but if it was something much bigger, like, well, we'll just stick with those. But the more important the decision, the harder it is to make. Avoidance is the opposite. You're choosing between two equally unattractive options. It can be difficult to resolve, can cause intense emotions, especially if it's something really important like declaring bankruptcy. You don't want to do that, or having to sell a family home. So the example here, vacuum the house or mow the lawn, maybe they're both chores you dislike. That's avoidance. Approach avoidance, there's both appealing and negative aspects. That can be difficult to resolve, and you might just kind of delay it for a long time. So go to prom with this girl, there's pros to that, but there's also cons to going to prom with him or her. So there's good and there's bad. Prom is expensive, but you're going to have a great time. What if she doesn't like to dance, or what if she wants to dance too much? There's lots of pros and cons. And then the final one, multiple approach avoidance, is just like the last one, except there's even more factors involved. They have to choose between both attractive and negative aspects of the available alternatives. So there's even more. And these are even more difficult to resolve just because they're really hard to compare. I wouldn't say colleges are necessarily hard to compare, but there's a lot more options involved, makes it multiple approach avoidance. All right, I think that was my last slide. Yep, that's it for Flip Notes 7-3.